Welcome back to WION World is One. Thank you so much for staying with us. My name is Costa Rica, and here's a look at what we've lined up for you on Speed News today. The lone suspect in the fatal shooting of two Israeli embassy workers outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, murder of foreign officials, causing death with a firearm, and discharging a firearm in a crime of violence. Officials say Elias Rodriguez was heard chanting "Free Palestine" after he was taken into custody. The charges were filed in federal court as FBI and police investigators pored over apparent writings and political affiliations of the suspect. The 2 victims struck by gunfire and killed were identified as Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram, a young couple about to get married. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced Major General David Zini as his pick for the next head of the Shin Bet Domestic Security Agency. The decision is the latest development in a long-running controversy surrounding the role, which has seen mass protests against incumbent chief Ronan Bar's dismissal. The Supreme Court on Wednesday ruled the government's decision to fire current domestic security chief was improper and unlawful. Netanyahu's move to tap Zini to replace Bar directly defied Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara, who had said that the Prime Minister must refrain from any action related to the appointment of a new Shin Bet head. Zini's appointment came after more than 2 months of political and legal wrangling over who should head the powerful agency. The Israeli military intercepted another missile launched from Yemen early this morning, targeting the country as sirens were heard in several areas. Undeterred by Israeli strikes on Yemen, the Houthis have continued to fire missiles at Israel in what they describe as an act of solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Since the start of the Israel-Hamas war in October 2023, the Houthis have launched dozens of missiles and drone attacks targeting Israel, most of which have been intercepted or have fallen short. Hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters gathered outside Israel's embassy in Athens, holding placards, waving flags and chanting slogans for Palestinian freedom. The demonstration, organized by trade unions affiliated with Greece's Communist Party, remained peaceful. Protesters condemned Israel's actions in Gaza. The protests come amid growing international pressure on Israel due to nearly 3-month blockade of supplies into Gaza, leading to famine warnings. Russian President Vladimir Putin has confirmed the creation of a security buffer zone along Russia's border with Ukraine during a virtual meeting with government officials. Putin stated that the Russian armed forces are actively working to suppress enemy firing points and to establish the zone. The Trump administration has revoked Harvard University's ability to enroll international students, affecting nearly 6,800 students. The Department of Homeland Security accused Harvard of creating an unsafe campus environment, citing alleged harassment of Jewish students. Harvard strongly disagreed, calling the move unlawful, and vowed to provide guidance and support to its students. The university claims the decision will harm both the campus and the country and is working to address the situation. At least 2 people were killed and 8 injured after a small plane crashed into a San Diego neighborhood. The crash ignited a massive fire that has damaged multiple homes and vehicles. Footage of the immediate aftermath of the crash showed a line of burning fuel linking the flaming cars. The crash occurred around 3:45 a.m. local time near the Montgomery Gibbs Executive Airport. According to the police, the incident at the Murphy Canyon community affected at least 15 homes. Assistant Fire Chief at San Diego Fire Rescue Department described a gigantic debris field in the densely packed neighborhood, adding there was just jet fuel all over the place. North Korea has said that it has begun steps to arrest and investigate those responsible for the failed launch of its second naval destroyer after leader Kim Jong-un expressed fury over the incident that he said was caused by criminal negligence. Launching a full-scale investigation into the warship accident, authorities claim that the incident resulted from a loss of balance, causing damage to the vessel. An internal inspection found that there were no holes at the warship's bottom, but the starboard hull was scratched and seawater then was flowing into the stern section through the rescue channel. South Korea's defense ministry has said that Seoul and Washington did not have discussions about the withdrawal of some U.S. troops stationed in the country. The ministry made the comments in response to a report by the Wall Street Journal that said the U.S. was considering pulling out roughly 4,500 troops from South Korea. According to the media report, which cited unnamed U.S. military officials, one option being considered was to relocate some of the troops to other locations in the Indo-Pacific region, including Guam. A Pentagon spokesperson has said that there were no policy announcements to make regarding any potential reduction of U.S. troops. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense has detected a significant presence of Chinese military assets around the island, including 20 People's Liberation Army aircraft, 7 People's Liberation Army Navy vessels, and 1 official Chinese ship. This development is part of a recent pattern of escalating Chinese military maneuvers around Taiwan, sparking concerns over regional stability and potentially threatening the island's security. Using the 500-meter aperture spherical radio telescope, Chinese astronomers have discovered a rare compact binary system consisting of a millisecond pulsar and a companion helium star. The system is thought to have formed through common envelope evolution and is significant for studying stellar evolution and gravitational wave sources. The pulsar spins at 10.55 milliseconds and the companion star eclipses it for 17% of its orbit. Such systems are rare, with only dozens estimated to exist in the galaxy. This discovery sheds the light on future research in stellar evolution theory. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro walked the streets of Caracas as the party closed its campaign rally ahead of regional elections on Sunday. The elections will determine members of the National Assembly, governors and other regional offices, marking a significant test for Maduro's ruling party. Maduro's legitimacy has been questioned due to alleged irregularities in last year's presidential contest. The National Electoral Council, loyal to Maduro's party, will oversee the elections. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado remains in hiding to avoid arrest, while others are in exile or prison. Colombia's first black vice president, Francia Marquez, has sparked a fresh crisis in the country's leftist government, accusing the administration of racism and patriarchy. Marquez's comments come less than a year before a presidential election and amid President Gustavo Petro's struggles to pass reforms. Her remarks highlight the challenges faced by Afro-Colombians who make up 10% of the population but are often poor and underrepresented.
Lo que he hecho, por último, mi tarea aquí como vicepresidenta no ha sido una tarea fácil.
Italy's constitutional court has ruled that 2 women can register as parents of a child on a birth certificate, saying recognition of parental rights can't be restricted to the biological mother alone in families with same-sex parents. The court ruled that it was unconstitutional for city registrars to deprive children born to same-sex parents of recognition by the biological mother and the woman who consented to the medically assisted pregnancy of her partner and assumed parental responsibilities. Costa Rican police have arrested 2 men with criminal records after a high-speed chase on a Pacific Coast highway led to the seizure of 5 cocaine and marijuana. Capybaras, being non-native to Costa Rica, will be taken to a refuge for conservation and education programs after receiving veterinary care. Costa Rica's Security Minister Mario Zamora said the police action was important because it highlights a phenomenon that has occurred in other Latin American countries where the world of drugs coincides with the introduction of exotic species that are not native to the country. Chilean President Gabriel Boric has unveiled proposals to resolve the long-standing conflict between the government and the indigenous people. The proposed measures include the creation of a new system for the restitution of indigenous land, strengthening support for victims of rural violence, constitutional recognition of indigenous peoples, and the establishment of a high-ranking indigenous affairs body within the state. The Democratic Republic of Congo's Senate has voted to lift former President Joseph Kabila's immunity, allowing him to be prosecuted on charges of supporting the M23 armed group, a Rwanda-backed militia in the mineral-rich East. The vote, which passed 88-5, enables Kabila to be tried in military courts for treason, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and participation in insurrectionary movement. Kabila, who has been living outside the country since 2023, was not present during the vote. The move is seen as a significant step by Felix Tshisekedi's government to address the ongoing conflict in eastern DRC, where the M23 group has seized swathes of land. Bangladesh's interim leader Mohammad Yunus reportedly threatened to resign if parties do not give him their backing. The reported threat comes as differences between the caretaker administration and the military appear to have come to a head. The army is pushing Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus to hold elections by the end of the year. Army Chief General Waqaruzzaman has reportedly urged elections be held by December so that an elected government is in place by early 2026. Japan's tariff envoy is headed to Washington for a third round of trade talks, vowing to press the US to roll back punitive tariffs imposed under the Trump administration. Despite being a key US ally and top investor, Japan faces 10% base tariffs along with 25% duties on cars, steel, aluminum, and auto parts. Japan's economic revitalization minister called the US moves regrettable, but emphasized the need for a win-win deal. Talks resume amid tensions with the US, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent skipping this round. The envoy is set to return to Washington on the 30th of May. The auto sector, vital to Japan's economy, remains at the center of this dispute. The US dollar is poised for its first weekly loss in 5 weeks. This comes as fears over America's mounting $36 trillion debt and fiscal instability triggered a flight to safe haven currencies. The dollar index is down 1.1% this week, despite US Treasury yields hovering near 19-month highs. Markets remain unconvinced, viewing rising yields as a sign of fiscal recklessness, not economic strength. The euro and the yen are both set for 1.2% weekly gains, buoyed by strong inflation data and interest rate expectations. Meanwhile, Japan's inflation remains firm. The Swiss franc is up 1.2% and the Australian dollar is flat after the central bank cut rates. Risk sentiment remains fragile globally. Oil prices slipped as a stronger US dollar and concerns over a potential OPEC supply boost pressured markets. The dollar surged after US lawmakers passed President Trump's tax and spending bill, making oil more expensive for global buyers. A Bloomberg report that OPEC may hike output by 411,000 barrels per day in July added to this bearish sentiment as well. Meanwhile, US crude storage demand has surged to pandemic-era levels, signaling market fears of oversupply. Traders now wait rig count data for further cues as well. Asian stocks surged as a recovery in the US Treasuries early on Friday allayed some fears over the country's fiscal strategy. An Asian stocks gauge is now on track to post gains for 6 weeks in a row. Wall Street futures pointed to a green open late on Friday. That will be a reversal to Thursday when stocks lost steam in the final minutes of US trading. The S&P 500 marked the third day of declines as the $8.6 trillion rally from April's lows ran out of gas. Following Thursday's surge across the curve, US Treasuries have now leveled down. The yield on a 30-year bond remained unchanged over the 5% mark. Bond markets this week have reflected investors' concerns about the fiscal health of the US economy. The Sell America trade has weighed more on the dollar. The greenback is down over 1% for the week, marking its most significant decline in the past 6 weeks. Deutsche Bank says the dollar is set to be the biggest loser in investors' bets against rising US debt. The 2018 Ballon d'Or winner Luka Modric has announced that he will not renew his contract and leave Real Madrid after next month's FIFA Club World Cup. That will bring the curtain down on a glorious 13-year stint, during which Modric lifted 28 trophies with Los Blancos. Real Madrid signed Modric in 2012 from Tottenham Hotspur for around $40 million. The Croatian struggled initially in Spain, but soon found his footing and evolved into one of the finest midfielders of his generation. He's featured in nearly 600 matches for the Spanish Giants and won 6 Champions League titles, 4 La Liga trophies and countless others. Bollywood icon Aishwarya Bachchan turned heads once again at the Cannes Film Festival. The star graced the red carpet in a bold black couture gown by Indian designer Gaurav Gupta. Her cape truly stood out not just for its rich texture but for the powerful touch of tradition as well. It was inscribed with a Sanskrit shlok from the Bhagavad Gita. For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.